Hello and welcome to the Church Nerd Podcast. This is Andrew. On this episode of the Church Nerd Podcast, Merry Christmas. This is all about Christmas, its history, where it came from, and where it probably didn't come from. I talk about Epiphany, I talk about Advent a whole bunch, and there's a great rant on that subject at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. A note to parents, if you have younger listeners, either riding in the car with you or in the room nearby, go ahead and let them skip this episode. Just throwing that out there. But without further ado, we're going to get into some really nerdy goodness, so let's sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of the Church Nerd Podcast. And now it's time for In Case You Didn't Know, with a warning I'm going to mispronounce foreign language words. Christmas is a shortened form of Christ's Mass. The word is recorded as Christes Masse in 1038 and Christe Messe in 1131. Christ, coming from the Greek Christos, is a translation of the Hebrew Messiah, meaning anointed. And Mass comes from the Latin formula ite missa est, go. It is the sending, the dismissal from the Latin rite. Archaic names for Christmas include Christenmass, from Middle English, meaning Christian Mass. Xmas is an abbreviation found often in print and is based on the initial letter chi in the Greek Christos. And while we think of it as a modern adoption, this abbreviation actually has precedent in Middle English. So, cool. So how did Christmas start? The middle of winter has long been a time of celebration around the world. Centuries before the birth of Christ, early Europeans celebrated light and birth in the darkest days of winter, especially during the winter solstice, when the worst of winter was behind them and they could look forward to longer days and extended hours of sunlight. In Scandinavia, the Norse celebrated Yule from December 21st, the winter solstice, through January. In recognition of the return of the sun, fathers and sons would bring home large logs, which they would set on fire, thus giving us our Yule log. The people would feast until the log burned out, which could take as long as 12 days. The Norse believed that each spark from the fire represented a new pig or calf that would be born during the upcoming year. The end of December was a perfect time for celebration in most areas of Europe. At that time of year, most cattle were slaughtered so they would not have to be fed during the winter. So for many, it was the only time of year when they had a supply of fresh meat. In addition, most wine and beer made during the year was finely fermented and ready to drink. In Germany, people honored Odin during the midwinter holiday. Germans were terrified of Odin, as they believed that he made nightly flights through the sky to observe his people, and then decided who would prosper and who would perish. And so that brings us to the Italians. In Rome, where winters were not as harsh as those in the far north, Saturnalia was celebrated, a holiday in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture. Beginning the week leading up to the winter solstice and continuing for a full month, Saturnalia was a hedonistic time in which food and drink were plentiful, and the normal Roman social order was turned upside down. For a month, slaves would become masters, peasants were in command of the city, businesses and schools were closed so that everyone could join in the fun. Also around the time of the winter solstice, Romans observed Juvenalia, a feast honoring the children of Rome. In addition, members of the upper classes often celebrated the birthday of Mithra, the god of the unconquerable sun, on, you guessed it, December 25th. It was believed that Mithra, an infant god, was born of a rock. For some Romans, Mithra's birthday was the most sacred day of the year. So where does Christmas come into all of this? Well, here we go. In the early years of Christianity, Easter was the main holiday. I mean, it still is, but bear with me. The birth of Jesus just wasn't celebrated, not until the 4th century. In the 4th century, church officials decided to institute the birth of Jesus as a holiday. Unfortunately, the Bible doesn't mention a date for his birth. a fact that Puritans would later point out in order to deny the legitimacy of the celebration. Although some evidence suggests that his birth may have happened in the spring, why would shepherds be herding in the middle of winter, for example? Pope Julius I chose December 25th. It's commonly believed that the Church chose this date in an effort to adopt and absorb the traditions of the pagan Saturnalia. First called the Feast of the Nativity, the custom spread to Egypt by 432 and to England by the end of the 6th century. By the end of the 8th century, the celebration of Christmas had spread all the way to Scandinavia. Today, in the Greek and Russian Orthodox churches, Christmas is celebrated 13 to 14 days after December 25th. This is because Western churches use the Gregorian calendar, while Eastern churches use the Julian calendar, which is 13 to 14 days behind the Gregorian. But both Western and Eastern churches celebrate Epiphany, 12 days, Yule log anyone, after their own respective Christmases. This is the day it is believed that the 3 wise men finally found Jesus in the manger. Now there is a lot to say about the timing of the wise men and how old Jesus was when they arrived, but I'm going to save that for an upcoming episode, so stay tuned. By holding Christmas at the same time as traditional winter solstice festivals, church leaders increased the chances that Christmas would be popularly embraced, but they gave up the ability to dictate how it was celebrated. By the Middle Ages, Christianity had, for the most part, replaced pagan religion. On Christmas, believers attended church, then celebrated raucously in a drunken, carnival-like atmosphere similar to Mardi Gras. Each year, a beggar or student would be crowned Lord of Misrule, and eager celebrants played the part of his subjects. The poor would go to the houses of the rich and demand their best food and drink. If owners failed to comply, their visitors would most likely terrorize them with mischief. Christmas became the time of year when the upper class could repay their real or imagined debt to society by entertaining less fortunate citizens. And so whenever there's too much of a good thing, as we all know, it gets nixed. Let's talk about the time Christmas was canceled. In the early 17th century, a wave of religious reform changed the way Christmas was celebrated across Europe. When Oliver Cromwell and his Puritan forces overtook England in 1645, they vowed to get rid of decadence in the land, and as a part of their effort, they canceled Christmas. By popular demand, however, Charles II was restored to the throne, and with him, the holiday. Now, the Pilgrims that came to America in 1620 were even more orthodox in their Puritan beliefs than Cromwell. They were too Puritan for the Puritans. As a result, Christmas was not a holiday in early America. From 1659 to 1681, the celebration of Christmas was actually outlawed in Boston. Anyone exhibiting the Christmas spirit was fined 5 shillings. By contrast, in the Jamestown settlement, Captain John Smith reported that Christmas was enjoyed by all and passed without incident. After the American Revolution, English customs obviously fell out of favor, including Christmas. In fact, Christmas wasn't declared a federal holiday until 1870. It wasn't until the 19th century that Americans began to embrace Christmas. In fact, they reinvented it and changed it from a raucous carnival holiday into a family-centered day of peace and nostalgia. But what was it about the 1800s that piqued American interest in the holiday? The early 19th century was a period of class conflict and turmoil. During this time, unemployment was high and gang rioting by the lower classes often occurred during the Christmas season. In 1828, the New York City Council instituted the city's first police force in response to a Christmas riot. This catalyzed certain members of the upper classes to begin to change the way Christmas was celebrated in America. In 1819, best-selling author Washington Irving wrote The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, Gentleman, a series of stories about the celebration of Christmas in an English manor house. The sketches feature a squire who invited the peasants into his home for the holiday. In contrast to the problems faced in American society, the two groups mingled effortlessly. In Irving's mind, Christmas should be a peaceful, warm-hearted holiday, bringing groups together across lines of wealth and social status. Irving's fictitious celebrants enjoyed ancient customs, including the crowning of a Lord of Misrule. Irving's book, however, was not based on any holiday celebration he had attended. In fact, many historians say that Irving's account actually invented tradition by implying that it described the true customs of the season. Also around this time, English author Charles Dickens created the classic holiday tale, A Christmas Carol. The story's message, the importance of charity and goodwill towards all humankind, struck a powerful chord in the United States and England, and showed members of Victorian society the benefits of celebrating the holiday. The family was also becoming less disciplined and more sensitive to the emotional needs of children during the 1800s. Christmas provided families a day when they could lavish attention and gifts on their children without appearing to spoil them. As Americans began to embrace Christmas as a perfect family holiday, old customs were unearthed. People looked toward recent immigrants and Catholic and Episcopal churches to see how the day should be celebrated. In the next 100 years, Americans built a Christmas tradition all their own that included pieces of many other customs, including decorating trees, sending holiday cards, and, of course, gift-giving. Although most families quickly bought into the idea that they were celebrating Christmas how it had really been done for centuries, Americans had really reinvented a holiday to fill the cultural needs of a growing nation. Now, as promised, I give you my Advent rant. I, Andrew, am an Advent Grinch. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. An Advent Grinch, according to my friend Quinn, is someone who holds on to Advent with a death grip, like a curmudgeonly old man telling Christmas to get off my lawn. You see, liturgical churches celebrate the season of Advent the 4 weeks leading into Christmas, which starts on December 25th and lasts for the 12 days of Christmas and ends with Epiphany on January 6th. You see, as I record this, we're not quite into Christmas yet. We still got about a week to go. And yet, outside in the wider world, there are shops with all the decorations. There's lights all over people's lawns and inflatables and all that kind of stuff. Amazon is shipping packages left, right, up, and down. And the music, the carols are everywhere. And I just want to block it all out and hide in my church and listen to Advent hymns, which, yes, there are Advent hymns that beautifully encapsulate the tone and the message of the season. And I want to hold on to that because it's not Christmas yet. Christmas pageants don't happen yet. They happen on Christmas Day. And so that's made me kind of a holiday season curmudgeon. I don't want all the stuff in the yard. It's not time for that yet. Wait until December 25th. It always makes me chuckle when I'm driving around on December 26th and I see naked old Christmas trees laying out next to the garbage in people's yards waiting to be picked up by the garbage man. Don't you know Christmas keeps going for 12 more days? Take your trees down in January. Keep them up. In fact, my wife and I have this tradition of really not even putting the tree up until right before Christmas Eve. As I record it, this is December 20th, and so yes, we kind of cheated a little bit and put it up today. But even today, I was just not in the mood. I want to hang on to Advent. I want to see those purple candles lit, or the blue, but I'll get to that in a second. You see, for a long time, for hundreds of years, Advent was a season of penitence, of getting yourself spiritually and mentally ready for the joyous, huge celebration that was Christmas. Much in the same way that Lent is a time of introspection and of penitence and of self-examination, so that you are ready for the huge, huge celebration that is Easter, the resurrection. Just like birthday parties don't just happen. Someone's got to order a birthday cake and pick a location and send out invitations and get the decorations set up and ready. Birthday parties don't just happen for people. There takes preparation. And so that's what Advent is. It's us preparing and getting ready for the party. And when we get to the party, it lasts for 12 days. So don't put up your trees now. Put them up close to Christmas and then leave them up all the way until Epiphany in early January. So that's why I really like that penitential feel. I want to feel like I'm getting ready for something as monumental as the coming of Christ. That's what Advent means, is coming. Not only are we getting ready for the story of the coming of Christ, born in Bethlehem, the nativity scene, but we're getting ready also in preparation for that second coming of Christ in the end times, for being fully present with God in the kingdom. Because even though we're present with God here and now, it's incomplete. It's not a perfect transparency. And in that second coming, we receive full, complete union with God. Now, if you are of a church that celebrates Advent, you may have noticed, especially in Episcopal circles, that there's been this transition to blue for the Advent color. Now, the purveyors of church vestments and altar hangings and such will tell you that the blue comes from the Sarum Rite of Salzburg, England, which used blue in their Advent ceremony. That can be debatable. I mean, historical vestments, when looked at by historians and experts nowadays, they look blue or they look purple or whatever color they used. But keep in mind that these people, hundreds of years ago, were using whatever vegetable dye they had locally around to make black. And you couldn't really get a good, true black. Even today, it's really hard to get a good, solid black that will last. Nowadays, they fade to kind of a weird dishwater gray. But if you're using vegetable dye, you're going to use something that would really kind of fade into a purple or fade into a blue. And so to say that the Sarum Rite was blue or these other areas used purple, that's debatable. They probably used black as a penitential color. And then as they faded over the decades and centuries, historians looking at them said, oh, well, this was a blue season, or this was historically a purple season. And don't get me wrong, these blue vestments are beautiful. I think they are fantastic. And if you want to get some, great. And if you already have them, wear them. They look really, really good. So whatever color you end up using, it doesn't really matter. But it is nice to get that nice fresh set of blue vestments. But now, as the story goes, blue is less of a penitential color and more of a royal color, even though purple was totally a royal color. And as blue being a royal color, we're getting ready for the king. Blue is all about the coming, the anticipation, the getting ready for the coming of Christ. It's less about the penitential and the gloom and doom, which is what Lent's all about. And yeah, I hear that, but, Lent is not all gloom and doom. It may be for some people because it makes them anxious to get all self-introspective. But I find Lent actually to be my favorite season of the church year, oddly enough. I love that I give myself a task that I can do, a Lenten discipline. With Advent, I like that I'm preparing myself for something as huge as Christ the King coming to be on earth for us, Emmanuel, God with us. But, as I say, I'm an Advent Grinch. When I was a kid, trimming the tree and putting up the decorations and the ornaments was really one of my favorite parts of the whole season. I loved looking at every single little ornament and picking where on the tree I was going to let it hang, and I definitely put my favorite ornaments right in front, right at eye level, and I definitely chose to put some of my least favorite ornaments around the back, regardless of what my family members thought of them. And I remember when we had those string lights that the little fuses would always go out, and my job was to go in and fix and replace those teeny, teeny, teeny little fuses. Those are memories that I really hang on to and love. But, as I grew older and kind of started living on my own through college and after college, I didn't have a tree of my own. If I did visit my family, the tree had already been set up. And so for years, I just didn't bother getting a tree. In fact, if I did get anything at all, it was probably an Advent wreath, because ultimately that was sort of the reason for my season. It was getting ready for Christmas in the church, not Christmas in the culture. And so as I was decorating the tree with my family today, little church nerd was going around as a toddler, putting all of her favorite little baubles up and getting really excited about it. And it was wonderful. And my wife was having food getting ready in the kitchen, and we were both enjoying some Christmas music and drinking some eggnog. And about an hour into this whole decorating of the tree, I realized that the Amazon playlist we were playing had no mention of nativity and Jesus and the scene that we're familiar with from so many Christmas pageants. It was just generic songs about wishing you a happy holiday and wishing you were here and waiting to see you and, snowy white Christmases, which, side note, I've never had a white Christmas because I'm in the South, and I think it's really northernist to have so many white Christmases because so much of the country doesn't have snow for Christmas. Anyway, I think it's a lovely idea, but, how much of the country has a white Christmas, let alone the whole world? Global Christmas carols, I don't even want to get into. But anyway, into that thought. My point is that I think I've grown out of the typical Christmas morning scene, and that kind of frustrates me. Maybe it's because I do too much church. I'm a seminarian about to graduate, and God willing, I'll be ordained sometime next year. And I think I just do too much church. And if you are a church musician or a church professional of some sort, you help out in other ways. Maybe you're just a involved congregation member and you always do readings on Sundays, or you help as an usher, or you have some other ministry that keeps you very involved in the liturgy of the church. And for people who are super involved, I think there comes a point at which we're just ready for the thing to be done. I remember when I was a school teacher at an Episcopal school, I was teaching all these Advent lessons. And then, of course, as schools get out early, you kind of have to wrap it up and go ahead and get to the Nativity. And so I'm teaching the Nativity story 32 times in a week. And then there's the pageants, and then there's the lessons and carol services, and there's wreath lighting, and all the stuff that we do crammed into just a couple of weeks of December. By the time Christmas actually got here, I had done it so many times in my classroom and for school that I was just ready for the thing to be over and done with. By the time family and loved ones were gathered around the tree on the 25th and we were opening presents, I was just like, great, done. I need a nap. I'm going to give the same rant when it comes to Easter for similar reasons. So just go ahead and prepare yourselves for that one. But I feel that maybe because I'm doing too much church, I'm just a curmudgeon about it. And if that's your experience, let me know. And if you think that I'm just not middle-aged old fart, then please let me know as well. I would love to hear your feedback and let me know how you feel. But I want to back up and talk about just the wider Christmas culture. How we know Christmas definitely was a product of the poem
"'Twas the Night Before Christmas" and All Through the House.
And also Coca-Cola's Red Santa. Those marketing, those things tying together and expounding upon the St. Nicholas mythos gave us holiday movies, Christmas albums, all the things that we experience every year. Tickle Me Elmo and people busting down glass sliding doors of shopping centers, Black Friday, all of those things. I get that we all want to come together as family, regardless of what our faith or our tradition is in that household. We want to come together as friends, as family, as people who want to care about other people and share that love of humanity, just in the most broad sense. But it bugs me that so many, inflatable candy canes are in yards and not, nativity scenes. In fact, I would rather just see some generic Christmas lights strung up on someone's front porch or something than I would a beautiful, wonderful Santa and his reindeer. Or if I see an inflatable snowman anymore, I'm just gonna go crazy. One, because I'm in the South, and as I just said, we don't have snow here, so inflatable snowmen are just bonkers. But it's not the reason for the season, y'all.
And while I'm on this highest of horses, please let me go on record by saying that the elf on the shelf is the worst.
It completely inverts every Christmas message. Whether it's Christ himself, who gave love and salvation and redemption to a world of people who didn't deserve it. It also messes up St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas of Myra, as legend says, gave 3 bags of gold to a poor, modest family who couldn't afford the dowry for their daughters. With this dowry money, they could be married off and have, hopefully, happy lives that didn't involve them, working the night. The elf on the shelf is a spy that makes children believe that they have to be moral and good in order to get anything. If they wanted a particular toy and their parent or parents couldn't afford it, they're going to say, oh, well, it's because I'm bad, I didn't get this. Or Santa really only loves me if I'm good. When in fact, the Christian message is you are loved just the way you are. And hopefully in response to this undeserved love, this agape, you will respond by living a Christian life, or at least living in faith and hope and love and the golden rule and all those good things. The elf on the shelf is the worst morality example you can give. A spy that makes you base your worth on the gifts and the material things you get, and tying that to the kind of person that people think that you are and are watching for you to be, and the kind of person that you know yourself to be. Do you think of yourself as someone who's on the naughty list, or do you think of yourself as someone on the good list? And also, for that matter, why has everything got to be a duality? We're all on the naughty list and on the good list, because gray exists. It's not all black and white. Anyway, end of Elf on Shelf rant. They're awful.
Now, I'm going to back up and say, if you are not a Christian and, if you're Jewish, I want you to tell me Happy Hanukkah. I'll tell you Happy Hanukkah right back. If you are of African heritage and you celebrate Kwanzaa, just go up and say, hey, Andrew, Happy Kwanzaa. And I'll say, hey, Happy Kwanzaa to you. If you are spiritual but not religious, and you just want to say happy holidays just to cover the feeling of the season, then sure, I will say happy holidays to you back. But also, if I happen to know that you're Jewish, I would be happy to say happy Hanukkah. And if you want to say Merry Christmas to me, that's great. I think that we all need to hold each other in love this season. I think we do need to say happy holidays just as much as we say Merry Christmas. And yet I want to just hold on to some nativity more than I hold on to an elfin version of an old Christian bishop. I mean, here I am. It's not even a week until Christmas Day, and I needed to vent and get that out there.
And I realize that I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. I'm trying to make it inclusive by focusing on the nativity, but also inclusive to make room for anyone who just wants to be a part of this broader holiday season. I am not one to tell someone what they are to believe and not to believe, but I do know what I believe, and I want to honor that. And it isn't just about this December holiday. It's about how we as humans treat other humans in our daily lives, in our schools and workplaces, with our manners, with our ethics, and so on. It's a part of living together in harmony. And if I may borrow a cliche, isn't that what Christmas is all about? Well, this has been the Church Nerd Podcast. Thank you for being here during this first year, and I am excited about the plans already underway for 2020. Follow me on social media for details and announcements on those upcoming episodes. Links to all those can be found at thechurchnerd.com. And as a special holiday surprise, if you sign up on Patreon now through the end of Epiphany, January 6th, you will be in the running for a pair of amazing church socks from Sockreligious. They're not sponsoring this episode. I just really like their stuff, and you will too. Go to patreon.com/churchnerd. Link in the show notes. Anyway, this has been Andrew. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, and God bless.